Good evening. Welcome to Face the Nation. I'm Fundo Mabalane, standing in for Clement Manyathela. It's great to have you with us on the SABC this evening. So tonight on the show, we'll again look at the disused mines issue as we continue to monitor operations to bring to surface illegal miners in Stilfontein. There's, of course, also the most recent rescue operation taking place in Mpumalanga at Sabi mine, which further highlights the prevalence of this illicit activity across the country. We'll speak to GIWUSA on their proposed solution to this problem, which they say is to reopen thousands of the ownerless and abandoned mines. But later on in the show, we'll speak to MK Party on two significant court judgments against them. These could have far-reaching consequences. The first being the Western Cape High Court setting aside the expulsion of members of the All African Alliance movement and their removal, or the removal of their names from the candidate list. And then the second one is the Mpumalanga High Court's order, which has reinstated the province's previous convener and subsequently set aside the appointment of uMkhonto. And then we'll close off the show with the ANC Veterans League's President Snuki Zikakala. The league has expressed its disappointment at President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to redeploy corruption-accused Minister Thembi Simelane. So quite a lot to get through, but my comment first. So the Stilfontein illegal miners saga, is, as it continues to unfold, has forced relevant stakeholders to the table to have frank discussions on illegal mining, its prevalence in the country, and the role of government and even the mines that have operated in certain communities. Now, the socio-economic impact of the closure of a mine in any town is not debatable. It's devastating. But what I'm wrestling with, though, is the inability of these mining companies and other investors to replicate the story of Johannesburg. Johannesburg's development has, or rather was, tied to a great extent to the fortunes of the mining industry. It diversified. It's an inspiring story. So why did other towns not diversify their economies? What role can government play in ensuring that there is diversification going forward while the industry is still booming? Well, what is apparent in all these questions is that various stakeholders have a role to play, which leads me to tonight's question. The question we're asking tonight is, do you think mining companies should take responsibility for abandoned mines that are taken over by these illegal miners? Let us know your thoughts on WhatsApp. You can send us your WhatsApp voice note right now on the number 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name as well as your surname and where you're sending your voice note from. And please keep it at 30 seconds or send us an X on @face_the_nation SABC. Now, more than 50,000 illegal miners have been arrested in different provinces since the establishment of Operation Vala Umgodi a year ago. The General Industry Workers Union of South Africa is urging the government to reopen abandoned mines as well as those that are currently under care and maintenance. GIWUSA President Mametlwe Sebei believes that this initiative will help address the unemployment crisis. He also advocates for granting artisanal mining certificates to mining communities. Sebei joins me live in studio. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Face the Nation.
Pleased to be here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I wanted to start with just developments from around 5 p.m. today. The National Police Commissioner was in Stilfontein. He addressed the media, and among the things that he had to say was that they are caught between a rock and a hard place, and this is primarily because of a funding issue. That even if they want to continue with the operation to bring the miners to surface, they just don't have the funds to do so. Your reaction to that?
Well, it is, a self-created dilemma. Firstly, the community, the families of those miners have been saying, we can and we are bringing them to the surface. And I think if from the beginning, instead of just chasing the family members, but rather had an operation that says you can no longer take anybody down, you can only bring people up, and they started the communication early on, that is from the 3 months ago. By now we should have everybody out of that mine. But it's not just what they did about months ago. where they simply cut, you know, a community rescue,
and water.
But also a supply of food, you know, medication, and of course water. That has created, you know, a tragic situation where now we see only bodies surfacing. But also even about 2-3 weeks ago, they stopped a community rescue which was low, but could have saved all the people that today are coming out, you know, in body bags. And I think we must say it. This is a police matter. And I don't think there's a two ways about it.
We saw a bit earlier on today that there was another letter that was brought to surface indicating that another miner has died. Has that specific miner been retrieved, the body?
Well, the letters that I've also seen was that, I mean, there's about 6, but I know that there's a 7th mine that I've heard about. The letters that have also surfaced is that we need an urgent retrieval of many more that are facing imminent death. And I think this just goes to expose the obvious lie that people can simply walk out of, you know, shaft 10 to 11. I mean, you know, almost as if it's just a stroll in the park, or they can jump out of, you know, a 3-kilometer hole.
Now that you touch on the ability to walk perhaps to shaft 11 or 10, we understand that they've also requested some sort of an engagement with the police minister through the community members that keep going down, that they would like for the exit now to officially be shaft 10 as opposed to 11. It seems for them, apparently, it's slightly easier. Do you know anything about this?
Well, the issue about those that are shaft, so let's understand it, right? The only way that you can get from shaft 10 to 11, which is where the media is concentrated, right, is by crawling through, as I said, flooded, treacherous, narrow, you know, underground tunnels, 3 kilometers down. And I think those that have surfaced are saying it took them 7 days of that crawling. Now, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means it's extremely, you know, difficult. It can be a serious proposition. And that's the reason that when we say supply them with food, water, is that as they gain strength, they are able to take that journey, even as you are risking those that are simply in an impossible situation.
Can that be said with certainty that once they get the food and water, they would be willing to come up? Because this is something that the police commissioner also mentioned, that the court judgment has added another difficulty or dynamic to the situation, because they're not so certain that once more food, as it continues now to go down, that once the food is there, many of them would have the appetite, for lack of a better word, to actually come up.
But here's the thing, when there was community rescue, not a single occasion was a rope thrown down and people didn't catch it and come to the surface. And people have been saying, we want to be rescued as of yesterday, right? But also, those that came through a shaft 10, they've indicated, these are young people that says it was only when they got the food that was supplied to them, I think 2 days before, that we had negotiated, that they gained enough strength for them to be able to make the journey. And as for the rest of the people who ask, but what's happening? They said, look, you can't take that journey being many, because let's understand what it means. It means a group of you crawling through a very narrow, you know, channel. So when you are many, it means if you meet a hurdle, right, you can't be able to turn back, being many of you, right? So that is the reality. But also, the more you take those journeys, the risk of other people being lost, people, being drowning in the floods, in the flooded tunnels and so on. Those are some of the stories that I heard when I had consultation with some of those miners and so on.
Now, not to cast
the reality is that many of them require a rescue through a rope on the surface. The state did say that they'll bring a professional equipment, as I've seen now that they brought in other mines, which would have made the process more efficient. But as you can know, as you know, with the ANC, now you are talking tenders. People are saying there's even a mafia that want a cut out of that tender. And you wonder, is this now about a tender and people who want to benefit from what I'm told will be worth a 1 million tender a day? Right? So,
Mr. Sebei, I just want to rope in one of the community leaders in Stilfontein. I believe we do have him on the line now, Johannes. Good evening, Johannes. Thank you very much for joining us on Face the Nation. We're busy now discussing the element of letters, because this is one that I think deserves to be at least ventilated. The letters, according to some, are seen to be letters that have a tone of entitlement, according to some. And I don't want to cast any aspersions, but when they're hearing of some requesting beef and all sorts of other requests that are there, and even just the pristine, if you look the state at which those letters are in, some are naively thinking maybe they should be dirty because you're speaking of these miners crawling through water, etc. And when they come out, they are wet, they are full of dust, etc. But you would see letters in this condition. Johannes, just to start with you and just share with us, or please just explain how the letters came to perhaps community members' position, and just maybe clarify for those that are not so certain that these letters are coming from the illegal miners underground.
Thank you very much. Let me take this time to greet the viewers at home and greet you and Mr. Sebei there. Some people, they will just speak from a distance, not understand what is really happening. It's very saddening, it's a very painful situation that we find ourselves in as the concerned volunteers, community leaders. The letter, they read the letter with a plastic. From there, they tied it in a rope, so there's no way that it can be weighed. Today we received 4 letters. Because we must understand one thing. When the letter arrives at the service, the first people that we read the message with are the police, are the police enforcement. We read that information with them to tell them what is it that the miners are requesting. There is no issue of entitlement here. It's the issue of people who are very desperate, who are really in need. Because the issue of that beef, canned beef, they've said, even some of the police and some of the medical personnel, they've said that issue can help a person. If a person has stayed a long time without eating, when it is that beef, it gives him a strength. It's not issue of entitlement. Not at all. Those people, they are very desperate. They are in need of help. Even the issue of saying that if ever they are given more food, they will not resurface. It's a pure lie. People have been resurfacing for the past 3 weeks. Since we started the program, people have been resurfacing. Even in this letter of today, they've also written that they want help. They want to be safe. Because now they said to us, from tomorrow morning, we must start resurfacing the people who are very sick. Because the last one died yesterday, but they said there's another one who died today. Because they are very sick.
Now, we understand that you've stopped your operation temporarily purely because the rope has become too weak. What is the status right now?
No, through the grace of God, there was a good Samaritan who came and donated a new rope today. So we've used the new rope for one load to lower the food to the miners today. So tomorrow morning we'll be commencing with resurfacing of those who are sick. But I think in the morning they will start with the body that they said there was the one person who died today. So I think the first thing we will do, they will start with the body. From there, we'll resurface those who are badly sick.
And then the communication, we heard that some of the community members will be speaking to the Minister of Police, Sizwe Party, on behalf of the miners who say that perhaps Shaft 10 should be used as the exit point. Why exactly is this?
No, the issue of Shaft 10 being used as the exit point is not possible. Because you must understand one thing, those people, they crawl through that steel to go up on top, and when they arrive there, they are badly injured. For the other way that we must do, we must get another rope to go and put in another shaft, 10 shaft. Because now we cannot say they are relying on resurfacing that steel, because it's very dangerous. Because if a person loses grip, dies instantly. But today we're also disappointed again because the commissioner of the police, Mr. Masemola, was on site. And 2 minutes after he left, the people, the dead body resurfaced. But they did not even have a chance, or they did not even have an interest just to wait and see the pain that those volunteers go through. Those people, they are very devastated. They need counseling now. But it seems that our law enforcement agency, our government, does not care about what happened. Because if you can see, after the dead body has been pulled, those other bodies, they will go back. You see, they will start closing their nose, going back. They don't even give us masks. We have to go around asking for masks. But yet we have a government that says the government for people, government that is changing for the people. But yet, in instance, I see a different government.
Mr. Sebei, you addressed community members in Limpopo and you called for some sort of mobilization that people now must go out, protest on the streets, calling for the reopening of some of those disused or abandoned mines. How would this play out if there was that call and government acceded to your demands to reopen the mines? Would you say at this point you would have some sort of structure to run these mines?
Look, for me, what is unfolding, the tragedy that is unfolding is Stilfontein, is the most horrific confirmation of an absolute need for us to abolish unemployment and poverty in this country. I refuse to accept that our fate has to be every quarter you have to be looking like 100,000 jobs created only to be lost in the next quarter. That despite all the zigzags, in the movement of employment, the reality is that the curve on the long term is that of a relentless increase in a chronic mass unemployment and poverty in this country. I do think we need to be able to bring all the industrial capacity that is currently not being used into service, into creation of jobs. And one of that is that there is 6,100 of these mines that are abandoned by the mining companies that are derelict and ownerless. According to government, over 2,000 of those still have a substantial amount of minerals to be able to be mined, to be able to be mined viably, right? The idea that we have to be sitting with these mines while waiting for people in Europe, China, wherever that they come from, and to decide whether they want to exploit these minerals with the cheapest labor from our enslavement is ridiculous. In my view,
but
is that government need to, right? Government need to seize all of those mines, right? Be able to recapitalize them and ensure that through over 2,000 of these mines, we create millions of jobs that we need. I mean, think about it.
But would it be safe? Would it be safe? Because the safety aspect is one. There's also how costly it could be, because many are still arguing that it would be a costly exercise because you need to take geologists. If government is coming in to endorse or accede to this demand, they would want to ensure that in as much as there's unemployment in a specific community, those community members must not be sent to their death. There's poor ventilation once these mining companies leave. There's no ventilation actually to speak of. You need some sort of an operation to deal with the water element. We all know that a lot of water is used in mining and it creates pollution. So what happens in that respect when you have to come up with very expensive operations to deal with the water? You've got very expensive exercise to deal with ventilation, the safety protocols, all of this. And you also cannot have them mining or digging blindly, because that's what leads to seismic activity. So you need the geologists to actually know or assist in saying you cannot dig this far, you can go so far and no further.
Well, that is the reality of mining as a whole. If you think that I'm a juggernaut of mining, I'm not, right? I mean, you would know that I'm an environmental lawyer, actually. The reality is that we are faced with a situation here where it was government, by the way, that said of these 6,100 mines that are abandoned, over 2,000 of them can be mined safely, productively, and in a way that with recapitalization, you can minimize the amount of death and of course, the pollution and others that in any event, I think the reason we have that crisis is because of corporate profiteering of, big, mainly foreign-owned mining companies that have monopolized mining, that are engaged in colonial mining, as I've said here many times.
So
the reality is that we are faced, yes,
who brings the money? Who brings the money?
No, I think that government has got to make sure that we reopen. It's government that we elect to end unemployment. The idea that people can promise us jobs when they go to elections, after elections suddenly they're not responsible for job creation. I refuse to believe that government cannot provide money. We need to make sure that all of these mines are reopened in a way that they are recapitalized to create the jobs that we need. Those mines that of course cannot be mined safely, they cannot be mined efficiently, with the returns in terms of what is worth the investment in those particular mines. They need to be properly rehabilitated. And what do you mean by that? There is tens of billions of rands that are sitting in trust funds that is part of the financial provisioning for rehabilitation of this mine. This mine can be rehabilitated, meaning they can be properly closed with sealing of the holes, as well as being adequately rehabilitated and repurposed, right, into, for instance, amusement park. When you look at what they've done with, Gold Reef, which was an old mine shaft that has been turned into amusement park that has created hundreds of jobs for people there. But also it can be used for housing, for farming, and other alternative uses. But even in the course of rehabilitation, you are able to create, obviously, tens of thousands of other jobs that we need. The reality is, I absolutely refuse that the only lot that we have is the fate of many of young people whose lives is being wasted by the unemployment, who are not in employment, not in education, not in training. We need to find a solution to that. And I do think that thousands of these, think about it. If just one of these mines, right, each of these mines, you assume that they employ about 2,000 workers. There are over 2,000. You're already looking at about 5 million jobs that you can be able to create, right? And if you have the multiplier, which is the benefits of these mines being operating, you can easily move to about 10 million jobs. Now, I'm not making an exact figures here, but I'm just saying that this, I think for me, is what we need to consider along other measures like beneficiation of the minerals coming out of the mining industry, reindustrialized economy, and create many more other jobs and abolish unemployment.
Let's bring in Jonas again. On your side, you've taken us through the dangers, or at least what most of these miners have to contend with when they go underground and even when they're brought to surface now. Would you think this is a viable option to reopen some of these disused mines?
No, I think it's going to be very important for these mines. Because you must understand one thing. The only thing that made our people to go underneath them, to go through that risk and dangerous position, is unemployment, is poverty. You cannot risk your life and go underground via a road just for the part of it. So I think Mr. Sebei is very correct. That's what our government must assist us. Because Northwest in the province, in the country, is the highest when it comes to high unemployment rate. So the government must just and reopen these mines. You see, in a slow scale mining or in an artisanal mining way, in any way that can make what gets.
But with so many spending priorities, can government honestly afford this some sort of recapitalization program for these mines, or perhaps government needs to use the one tool that they have at their disposal, which is legislation, to say they need to put some sort of legislation that imposes that aspect of recapitalization on those that used to mine in those places?
But let me just come here. Isn't unemployment and the poverty of the working class in this country a priority? Can there be any other priority than that? I do think that we have got to address unemployment. I do think that the government in this country must put no stop in making sure that we invest in the creation of jobs. If there's anybody who can disagree with that... But should they
not place the responsibility a bit more on the miners, or at least the mining companies, pardon me?
Absolutely, they should. And they are allowing a cooperate impunity. Let me give you that effect. Even there's the fact that we have these 6,100 mines that are abandoned. For me, there is a crime of institutionalized illegality of cooperating miners, right? 2 is a crisis of illicit financial flows. UN Convention on Trade and Development says this country is losing $62 billion in illicit financial flows, many of which are from the mining industry, right? Because of misinvoicing, where the subsidiaries of these multinational companies export minerals through a sale of sister companies, right? Through artificially low prices, right? There is over 1 trillion rent that we lose annually from wages that are taken off from the negotiating tables with the workers, from a state fiscus that could be funding, services, education, houses, and all of that, from community development. But even if you accept what these companies are declaring, it is pitiful, it's insulting, it's racist, it's colonial what they're spending on our communities. Last year, the industry turnover was 1.1 trillion. A year before that, it was 1.2 trillion. What is it that is spent on, right? 1.80 billion went to salaries and wages. 160 billion went to taxes and royalty to the state. Only 4.9 billion, that is less than 5 billion of 1.1 trillion in industrial turnover was invested in community development. But also, it is a fact that lots of these minerals, about of the 782 billion worth of minerals in primary sales that they sold last year, less than 2 billion were sold in this country. Many of them were shipped off raw as they are, right? To Europe, to China, to America, and everywhere else, except this country. That lack of beneficiation of the minerals is a theft for the future of many young people that will otherwise be employed in other industries that will build a resilient economies and communities that will be able to transition to sustainable post-mining economies when the mines inevitably close. We need to reindustrialize this economy by creating the millions of jobs in those industries that should be benefited in minerals. And that this government is not doing.
No, but at least they've spoken of the need to beneficiate at this point.
Spoken of for 30 years.
But just in closing, I want to take it back just to you, Jonas. Well, it seems there is a greater, I don't know, in this instance we're seeing that there is a greater push now to move towards this beneficiation where it moves from just being a concept or a policy on paper.
They are efficient in killing black miners, but not efficient in resolving unemployment. How can that be right? For 30 years, every measure, unemployment is rising. Poverty level is now reaching 2/3 of the population. Access to housing is going down, not up, right?
Mrs. Sebei, we were just in the interest of time.
I
just want to rope in our colleague here and just speak to him and just get your final thoughts. We're seeing what's happening currently in Sabi, where at least their rescue operation is being led by police. And as much as they're using the same sort of mechanism as the one that you guys have been using in Stilfontein, it's merely a rope, it is rudimentary, but nevertheless, it's an operation led by the police. In your case, it's an operation of using the same rope, but led by community members. How does that make you feel?
No, we're very disappointed. Even in our meetings, we had a meeting with the ANC, we raised that point. That in Sabi, the police are not just standing there looking at us like they're watching TV. But what is happening in Stilfontein is a total disgrace. But they told us that police were not can assist people. But in Sabi, it's happening. Even the soldiers are there. What is the difference? Because they're all of them, they're understaffed. So what is and not what's the problem? But yet, there's nothing we can do. What we want to do, our main objective is for us to save those lives, to retrieve those dead bodies so that their families can bury their loved ones.
Mr. Sebei, your take on just that, what we're seeing taking place in Sabi in comparison to what we continue to see in Stilfontein?
It shows is a carelessness of government that has allowed many of those miners to die needlessly. And I think is a reaction, is a protest by the community there, many voices in this country, but also internationally, that has forced them to take a different approach elsewhere. And it is that which, more than anything, is a crashing confirmation that the death of those miners in Stilfontein was actually unnecessary. Is an act of state murder, and I think we must call it what it is.
Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. That was President of GIWUSA, Mametlwe Sebei, as well as community leader in Stilfontein, Johannes, there speaking to us. We'll continue our conversations after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, members of the All African Alliance movement have successfully challenged their expulsion in the Western Cape High Court, alleging that uMkhonto Sizwe Party leader Jacob Zuma sidelined them. On December 4th, 2024, the court annulled their expulsion and the removal of their names from candidate lists. The clergy members who endorsed the party in January 2024 contested the Speaker of the National Assembly's refusal to swear them in as members of Parliament. MK Party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndhlela joins us live now via Teams. Good evening, Mr. Ndhlela. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, many are labeling the latest two judgments as serious court blows with far-reaching consequences. Let's start with just your reaction to the Western Cape judgment, setting aside the expulsion of the members of the All African Alliance movement.
Good evening, Mkhonto, and good evening to your viewers. Yes, as uMkhonto is Sizwe, we note the outcomes of these judgments. As you know, uMkhonto is Sizwe, whenever we've been challenged, in any court process, we respond. So it would be the case here that we find ourselves whereby it's said that we did not respond to court papers and so on and so forth. But our legal team is reviewing that and will use the legal processes to respond accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Now, court outcome aside, what was the decision taken on the organization that when you entered into this agreement with them, they were supposedly going to campaign with you and you committed to include them in your deployments come time to go into government? What exactly was decided upon before all of this?
No, I think there's one thing that South Africans should note is that, we're a party that is led by leaders that are very fair. And we work with, as I said, uMkhonto is a party for all South Africans. And we did state that we work with traditional leaders, we work with religious leaders, and such was the case. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, you'll recall at one point we opened up a case off the back of our list being manipulated. And that case is with the Stilfontein police station, and this was much earlier in the year. I think it was at the time after the elections. And, this is a process that's ongoing where we're raising and we cite issues of our list being manipulated. And one of the things that we did state, by the way, was that President Zuma, as part of our strategy, was not supposed to have been mentioned or even put there as one of the candidates on the candidate list of the IEC.
Now, you emphasize that there was an agreement to work together, be it with religious leaders or traditional leaders. So the work was just ahead of elections, or there was also a commitment that beyond that, whatever the electoral outcome, they would be included or deployed?
Well, remember, as I said, and I'll state again, that we did say that our focus is on traditional leaders. If you look at it historically, this land belongs to our ancestors. And uMkhonto is here for exactly that, to emancipate our people. So we were going to ensure in our strategy that we garner all the support from all members of society, including religious leaders as well as traditional leaders. And that's that. Anything besides that, we, as uMkhonto had to ensure that if there's any element where we feel that there's mistrust that has been now introduced, we then obviously review strategy and we, formulate a strategy and position ourselves accordingly. And that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But let's not forget that there is a reason why we took this matter and we opened up a case in the first place. But again, those issues and those elements are elements that we investigated by the police, and the courts will then review the evidence that we've submitted and take it accordingly. Mm-hmm.
Then to the Mpumalanga judgment reinstating your former convener in that province, Mary Padi. You've stated that specifically with that one, it was a miscarriage of justice. Just take us through this.
Look, again, what we're seeing here is very interesting elements, where what transpired in that case is as the case of what transpired in this particular case. We obviously reviewing the papers, which from where we're sitting, we've never received those papers. As you know, uMkhonto sees we're not cowards. Whenever there's any matter that's brought before the court, we respond accordingly, as you would have seen. There's a sequence of events that have happened where we've been challenged in court and we respond accordingly. Mm-hmm. So one, they need to ask themselves, why did uMkhonto not respond in these particular cases?
Were you served or were you served late?
That everyone must ask themselves.
Pardon me for interjecting there. So were you served, or is it an issue of, yes, you were served, but you were served late so you couldn't respond?
No, it's not an issue of served or being served late here. It's an issue of us making a determination as to how that communique came through to us. And then we have to follow the court processes and deal with it accordingly. That's that, nothing else. And look, I think what's also important for South Africans to realize and take note of is that we have a legal team that's reviewing what court processes were followed, within the ambit of a judicial process and a court process, as which, in the way we know it. And right now, I cannot comment on the details and intricacies of what exactly transpired there, because our legal team is doing an assessment on that and will respond in due course. But what we can say is uMkhonto is a party, as you would know, that is not a party led by cowards, and if there's anything that we have to deal with head on, we'll deal with it head on.
Not to deal with the merits of the case, but just for clarity, because there's also the impression that perhaps this matter was heard on an ex-parte basis where you were not brought to court, you knew nothing of it. So again, it's just a matter of just getting clarity. Were you served at all? Or are you trying to say that perhaps the specific matter was served at the wrong address? What exactly happened there, without getting into the merits of the case?
But without necessarily getting into the merits of the case, I think our constitution is very clear that we're a political party, and if there's any issues, we deal with them and we resolve them politically. And our constitution is also very clear on the fact that, if you're going to take the party to court, that in of itself is going to be seen as bringing the party into disrepute, whereas, if we've communicated with you and you then don't respond, and you maybe do agree at some point that you'll give us, some sort of insight in terms of what would have transpired in whatever situation, regardless of these two instances, and that we engage you politically. In this case, we find ourselves in a situation where we now have nothing else to exercise but our constitution, and it states very clearly that if you're going to be a representative, a public representative, in Parliament or in the legislature, you're there off the back of the uMkhonto Sizwe Party ticket.
Now, when it comes to Miss Mary, there's also another serious allegation that was raised. It said that she was involved in the assassination plot against General Mdluli, who many would know in Matafeni is quite a known leader there and also businessman. What is the story there?
Well, look, these are a sequence of events that are unfolding. And as I said, we'll respond to the public in due course accordingly. Our legal team is reviewing all the documents, the processes that were followed, and we'll respond accordingly. And, here's the reality. If, in actual fact, we were sitting in court and opposing this matter, all the questions that you're asking, we have actually addressed them in court. And I wouldn't want to, commit the organization to a process that's still ongoing, where the facts themselves are a bit sketchy. So until our team, our legal team, has got a proper sense and a handle of what transpired, only then we'll be able to respond and respond accordingly.
Okay, but then just in closing, Party has always maintained that the party failed to follow due processes in her removal and therefore trampled on her rights. Was the process followed, even where we've just touched now on the allegations? When you decided that she must be relieved of her duties, was there a specific process that was followed?
Look, our constitution is very clear. We have a disciplinary committee, and those details again will be unpacked in the legal and court processes. But as it is, she knows, and all members, we're a party that is also democratic. That's why we have a constitution. The constitution is a guideline, the framework in terms of how we engage in such issues. And that then gives us guidance. Did we follow processes? Well, wait and hear, because we know that we're a party that is not going to use any forms of punitive measures against any member. Remember, we're a party that is now going and focusing on its first year anniversary, and the last thing we want is to create an impression as if we're an undemocratic party that just takes decisions willy-nilly. Then what's the point of having a constitution? We have a constitution for a reason. And right now, we're focusing on the 15th of December, after a resounding victory with the official opposition in government. And, right now, we and South Africans should not be sidetracked with sideshows. What we're saying is, we are a party for the people. We're focusing on 15 December. We're a successful party. And there's always going to be elements And there's always been elements of infiltration, rogue elements, rogue individuals that say that they are true to the cause, and only to find that at the last minute they actually are not. And we've seen it. We've seen it, as you would know, with an individual that believed that, as a so-called founder, the court found in our favor. So all we're saying is that South Africans must be patient. Let's focus on the 15th of December, the first anniversary. All these other activities, which seemingly have gone unchallenged, is still questionable. Let's wait until that process unfolds. And at that point in time, South Africans will know. But right now, we're more excited about having won, as far as we're concerned, these elections, sitting as the opposition party in the National Assembly, challenging the status quo in KZN off the back of what we still believe is a rigged vote. And people must give us the country to run. Mm-hmm. People want their country back, and we will ensure that the people's will is demonstrated and is delivered within all legislations and parliament.
All right, Mr. Ndhlela, thank you very much for your time this evening. That's MK Party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndhlela. I believe we have a number of responses to our question. The question we're asking tonight is, do you think mining companies should take responsibility for abandoned mines that are taken over by illegal miners? Let's look at some of your comments. Now, Michael Helu says the mining companies that have abandoned the shafts without properly securing them from being used by illegal miners must take full responsibility and must assist the police to retrieve the illegal miners from underground to the surface so that the law can take its course. Pants says, hi uMkhonto, they are legally responsible for the mine rehabilitation and closure after they close businesses. There cannot be ownerless mines in South Africa. Those companies or their shareholders must be still alive. They must reimburse. All right, some very interesting views there. Do keep them coming. A number of you feeling that indeed the mining companies have or should at least shoulder some sort of responsibility when it comes to rehabilitating those mines, and that perhaps at this point they should be assisting with the rescue operations. I believe we also have voice notes. Let's listen to those.
Sam Alekotrikop is beautiful uMkhonto Dumela. It is in the nature of digging that whenever you dig a hole, the right thing to do is to bear the responsibility of closing it. The common example is that even when we bury our loved ones, we make sure that we close the grave. Failure to close abandoned mines is a temptation for former miners who know the value of the minerals. Bye-bye.
Mining companies are the mastermind of those Zamazamas. They are the ones who are sending them to go underground and mine for them. Simple.
All right, a very interesting take there from some of our viewers. We continue with our conversations after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, President of the African National Congress's Veterans League, Snuki Zikakala, has expressed disappointment with President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to redeploy Thembi Simelane to head the Human Settlements Department after a cabinet reshuffle. Simelane is accused of taking a loan of 575,000 from Gundo Wealth Solutions, which is linked to illicit investments in the now-defunct VBS Bank. Reports suggest she used the money to buy a coffee business in Sandton while serving as mayor of Polokwane. Zikalala joins us live via video link. Good evening, Mr. Zikalala. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, you've added your voice to those expressing disappointment at the president's decision to redeploy Minister Simelane. Just talk us through your views as a league, just on the step taken by the president.
Well, we as Veterans League, we are really disappointed. And secondly, we just cannot understand what made the president to move it from one department to another plump position and thinking that this matter will go away. And so, because it is, the evidence is there that she put in 575,000 rand into VBS, and she wasn't allowed to do that. And currently there's evidence that she's been traveling to Disney, spending money which is inexplicable. money which she was unable to earn as a mayor of Polokwane, where she was. And so we are really surprised and shocked. We just don't understand really what is happening. And
that you refer to, be it the Disneyland trip, be it perhaps the car that was bought in cash, or even the stand that was bought in cash, all of this emanates from a specific investigation by a media publication, and she's gone on to respond and said, according to her, that was an unauthorized, at least, audit on her lifestyle in that respect. So just with those alone, what would have been the most satisfactory decision that should have been taken by the president?
Well, the president should have put her on leave until this matter has been resolved. Because what is happening now damages and it dents the image of the organization. It's the organization that we are much more concerned about. And even an individual has been found wanting, or she's been found wanting, that individual must gladly step aside and let the case be dealt with. Because it's not about her. She's been elected by a community, by society, to represent them. Now, if the community and society sees these allegations coming up, and it means that they are saying that we're not serious about corruption, about dealing with corruption. And the Constitution makes it very clear that the president has to deal decisively with those who are implicated in corruption. That's what the powers the president has. And so we just don't understand what is happening. And really, we are flabbergasted. We don't know what is happening. And we are definitely going to meet with the president and share our views, because we are really disappointed. We just cannot, because this matter is inexplicable. It cannot be explained what is happening. And we are renewing the organization. We are saying that those who are implicated in state capture and VBS, they must stand aside. The law must take its course on them. And that's what we stand. We are not saying people are guilty until they've been tried. We are saying that immediately, if your image is denting the image of the organization, definitely that person must gladly step aside and let the matter be resolved. For instance, we have Comrade Ndhlela. He had to be recalled from Australia because there were allegations of corruption. Now, immediately when that was cleared, he got appointed as the ambassador in India. The same thing we had Comrade Mabuya Kulu, who was implicated in corruption. He stood trial. He was found not guilty.
But in this instance, pardon me for...
real ANC people. ANC people, they must feel that, look, we cannot disappoint the organization. This is not about me as Zikalala, but this is about the organization. But we are losing confidence of society that we are not dealing harshly with corruption. But let me put a proviso here. The Secretary General of the ANC agrees with us on these issues. Last week, we had an NEC of the Veterans League, and the NEC of the Veterans League said to us, Zikalala, you and the Secretary General of the Veterans League, you're not taking us seriously when you want to deal with corruption. Go and see the SG. We went and saw the SG. The SG said, comrade veterans, you are right. We'll deal with these issues. And so we are happy that we have that rapport with the Secretary General. That's a rapport we want to have with the President. We have that rapport.
Now, Mr. Zikalala, you have that rapport, but one wonders if, was this matter actually canvassed with all leaders of the African National Congress? Because in as much as we wouldn't want to conflate party and state, the President took the decision as the President of the country. But what we've seen even just before the formation of the Government of National Unity is that there would be a lot of conversations that take place before such a decision is taken. It is his prerogative, it is his right, constitutional right at that, to decide as to who he hires as a minister and who could be dismissed as a minister. But was this matter properly canvassed with all leaders within the party?
Well, we as Veterans League, we did meet with the president before GNU appointments were made. We made it very clearly that, Comrade President, don't involve people who are implicated in state capture at all. Because we have lost the elections, we've got 40%, and society is not happy with us. Society is aggrieved. And that's one of the things that made us to lose elections. Secondly, is that people are not happy that we failed to deliver on local government infrastructure. Our municipalities are dysfunctional. We've got 66 dysfunctional municipalities, and we have not fixed them. And so that's exactly what society is not happy with. Currently, what is done, the ANC has done, it has a committee which is called Local Government Intervention Team, which is looking at fixing those 66 dysfunctional municipalities, which we are going to do. We are going going to fix those dysfunctional municipalities. But now we have to deal with issues of corruption. Corruption is a cancer that is eating the ANC, and it cannot be allowed to go on like that. We know what is a problem. We have to fix it. The president has to come along with us.
Now, the president says the decision was to strengthen the efficiency of government with no further explanation beyond that as to what expertise perhaps the minister at this point would bring to the portfolio of human settlements. Nobody really knows. But of course, society has singled her out as opposed to other ministers because of what's happening now with the VBS allegations. So it seems that a lot of citizens are trying to make sense of the decision, and some are struggling to move beyond this possibly being a mere kicking for touch, where the president now was seen to have done something without doing anything at all.
Yeah, well, it's true. Well, we respect what the society is saying. That is what exactly we discussed with the president, because it's really unacceptable. And as I said earlier on, it's inexplicable that you're moving her from constitutional affairs and putting her in human settlement. Another plum job. And with that negativity is not going to go away until she has stepped aside herself. She must use her own conscience. It's about the organization. It's not about an individual. She must say, I'm disappointing people who
But are we not shifting the goalpost here? Because there's also a grouping in society that holds the view that the president couldn't have done more than what he did because she hasn't been charged. All he could do was to recognize that there is a concern around her remaining as justice minister with a national prosecuting authority that must decide whether to charge her or not. They say that at the very least, how he handled the matter was the only way he could have handled it, because you cannot say use your conscience if the ANC has a step-aside policy that is connected to charges being preferred against an individual.
No, the president can ask her to step aside for now. The president has that prerogative, because the president is bounded by the constitution that there must be rule of law in the country. The president can say, no, there's too much cloud over you. Can you please step aside for now, or resign for now, until we resolve this matter? Comrade Zikakala, immediately when he got charged, he stepped aside.
Yes, but he got charged. In that instance, he was charged, but in this case, it's still an ongoing investigation. So would some not be actually justified in saying that the goalpost is being shifted here? Because there must be some level of consistency that you step aside because you've been charged, or if you're saying that if just the allegations are very serious, the president must then just exercise his prerogative and have you step down a bit.
Yeah, you're right, Mfundo. You're right that she has not been charged. That's what the constitution of the ANC says. You must be charged, then you can step aside. But what we are saying is that she has not been charged, but the president can use his prerogative and say, kindly step aside for now. Kindly step aside for now until this matter has been resolved. That will definitely save the ANC. Here, it's about the soul of the ANC. It's all that we are saying. That is why she, as a member of the ANC, she must be saying that this is too much for my organization. She did not put herself there. It's the ANC that put her there. She must say, this is not for the ANC. This is not for the country, because we're losing votes. We're losing credibility.
It sounds to me as though you're saying the bar of waiting for somebody to be charged is far too low for the African National Congress now, in this era where they've dipped below 50%, that sometimes the allegations themselves warrant that a person step aside. Is that what you're saying?
Well, like what we are saying is that she had gone to, firstly, we have a process within the ANC. She has to go to the Integrity Commission first. She has gone to the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission was not satisfied. They said she must come back. That's why her report was not there when we discussed those were seen by the Integrity Commission.
All right.
The Integrity Commission. But now the Integrity Commission could not reach a conclusion about her. They said she must come back. And so we don't know whether she has gone. We're waiting to hear when we meet in 2 weeks' time, whether she's appeared or not. We'll then get the report from the SG, because the SG has said to us, every NEC meeting will present the Integrity Commission's report. Now, if she has gone to the Integrity Commission for the second time, the Integrity Commission will give proposals, which the ANC must adopt. But we are saying we cannot wait for that long, because society is not happy with us.
All right,
and
Mr. Zikalala.
Happy as well.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this evening. That's President of the African National Congress's Veterans League, Snuki Zikakala. And that's where we leave it for tonight. Enjoy your evening further.